The Artificer is an unearthed arcana. It has seen, it's definitely been revisited, reimagined. Tell me about each of these subclasses and what you were thinking in the designing of them.
So the Artificer overall is this class that's all about making things. And then when you delve into each of the subclasses is expert at making particular things, but still generally great at making things, modifying things, which is why the class's spells mostly emphasize buffing, debuffing, that sort of thing. This is all about tinkering, right. Whether it's with objects or people. Each of the subclasses digs down into this some portion of this broad umbrella of tinkering with things. With the Artillerist, we have the Artificer who's really great at firepower of various sorts, whether it's single target, multi-target, area damage. The Artillerist gets more of the big boom spells than any of the other Artificer subclasses. They can summon up a turret-like object that can fire each round at people, and that firing each round is in addition to whatever it is the Artificer is doing, so it has the potential to be quite powerful. You get to decide what your turret looks like, so it could be terrifying, it could be super cute, it's really up to you. And when I was doing my writing of this class, I looked for different places where I could give the player the option to choose what something looks like. Because my idea was, if someone has decided to play this class that's all about making things, likely it's a player who loves the fantasy of being a maker, and that's why I wanted to make sure this class, more so than any of our others, has a lot of reflavoring opportunities. Now, really, you can reflavor almost anything in D&D. Right. This class, though, is really inviting you in a very forward way, make this your own.
The wording of it is so encouraging, and it gets me so personally excited to play an Artificer, because it really is your class. Yes. There's so many options there. And so, like the Artillerist, like you specifically said in the language, you can have like something like a blunderbuss, but it's shooting firebolt.
Yeah, one of the special things about spellcasting in the whole class, not just in the Artillerist, is your spells can come from your tools. And we make it clear up front that if your DM allows guns in your campaign, the tool or weapon you're using could be a gun. So if a person wants to be this gunslinger, launching fireballs and lightning bolts and other forms of ammunition out of your weapon, right. This class allows you to do that. And I think if that's the fantasy you're going toward, the Artillerist is the best option among the four for really leaning into that fantasy. The Artillerist has wands in addition to the turret, because the Artillerist, again, is all about shooting magic on the battlefield. Right. What those wands look like is up to you. If you want your wand, again, to look like a firearm, go for it.
You can put a trigger on your wand, whatever.
Yeah, if you want your wand to look like you're blowing bubbles, but those bubbles are very
really
harmful.
Fast bubbles that turn into fireballs.
Yes, yep, go for it. And,
well, I have to now.
And I am really excited when the Artificer finally crystallizes into its final form and people are playing it at D&D tables. I look forward to seeing all of the different wild ways people decide to flavor different aspects of not only the Artillerist but the other three subclasses as well.
And the Artillerist is the beginning of having essentially a pet. In some ways.
So yeah, the turret, you don't have it out all the time, and it's really up to you and how you flavor it, how pet-like it is. Right. It's not a creature, so it isn't technically a pet. Right. It really is a mobile object that you create. I felt it would be a big design miss if I gave you Artificer subclasses that didn't actually make things, which is why all four of them produce something in the world. Now, two of those subclasses produce actual pets, and two produce objects that have special properties. And depending, again, how you flavor them, they can start having a companion-like character to them. But again, the maker needs to make things, and that's why each of the subclasses has something very visible that they produce in the environment. Another one of the subclasses that has a strong battle theme, like the artillerist, is the battlesmith.
Tell me about the battlesmith.
So the battlesmith is the artificer who is all about weapons. Many people, when they read the subclass to start, might misread and think it's just about melee weapons, but actually the battlesmith has potential to be great at weapons of all sorts. And they can channel magic through their weapons, they can make attacks using their intelligence rather than their strength or their dexterity, and they create an actual pet, a companion who goes around with them, an Iron Defender. The Iron Defender has been in Eberron, the world that sort of artificers are most associated with. Iron Defenders have been in Eberron since the setting was introduced back in 3rd edition. And back in the day, all artificers could make a companion like an Iron Defender to be with them. And so the Battlesmith is the subclass that has that companion built right into it. And the companion, much more so than actually its previous versions in the last 2 editions of D&D, really leans into the defender part of its name. Right. I wanted to make it so that this wasn't just this pet that wanders around with the battlesmith and, you know, bites or swipes with its mechanical paw. I wanted it to truly be good at defending people, because the story I had in mind for the battlesmith, working with Keith Baker, is that these are artificers who, in the Great War that just ended in the world of Eberron, who were not only out there fighting, but they were out there protecting people and dragging the injured off the battlefield. You can imagine that people would have these memories of, you know, just when they thought they were going to die on this battlefield, that this artificer suddenly strode forth with their faithful mechanical hound or whatever, you know, form that Iron Defender took beside them and saved their life. And so I built into the Iron Defender this ability for it to repair itself and other constructs and objects. But then it also has this really potent defensive reaction. And rather than its attack being the thing I think people will associate with the Iron Defender, I think in play, it's really going to be that defensive reaction. And often, when you're playing that Iron Defender, you're going to want to position it so it's next to your foes and can mess with their attacks using its defensive pounce. And then in time, as you go up in level, you can even have healing magic radiate out from your Iron Defender. When I was first imagining this new version of the Iron Defender, the visual that kept popping into my mind was basically a mechanical Saint Bernard. That, you know, this big faithful hound next to you, right, that would, you know, run out and help people, but also be formidable in combat.
Right. Oh yeah, I'm more of a direwolf guy.
Yeah, and if you want your Iron Defender to look like a big wolf, you can do that.
Little tiny Tippin Spaniel. just runs out there.
And it doesn't need to look canine at all. I mean, again, really the sky's the limit on how you want to take this mechanical creature and make it look.
So the Alchemist is very much not so much technology as chemistry.
Yeah, the Alchemist is in some ways the most classic in fantasy terms of the 4 different flavors of Artificer. The Alchemist is not only drawing on different elements that have been in Eberron's lore in the past, but it's also drawing on lore about alchemy in the Middle Ages of our world. And that's why the class has the homunculus built into it, because homunculi are associated with alchemy in the Middle Ages, these creatures you create using different strange mystical chemical combinations. But the alchemist is also really good at healing people, you know, bringing people back from the dead, doing things with acid, all of these classic things you would expect of an alchemist. Now, one thing we have heard from our playtest feedback is actually that people don't really want that gremlin built into the alchemist. So what I am exploring for the next version of the class is potentially making that gremlin an option for all artificers and just increasing the alchemist potion abilities. And because one of our commitments with 5th edition, and this goes all the way back to the D&D Next playtests, is we listen to our playtesters.
Right.
We don't always look to our playtesters to solve the problems, but we do look to our playtesters to point out areas where it, sort of like in a doctor's office, this thing is, was causing my elbow to hurt, and then it's our job to figure out, well, how can we replace the pain you're feeling with happiness? And so there's a good chance that alchemical homunculus will take on a different form the next time people see the Artificer.
I don't know. What about a clone? Like a little tiny clone? Not like 100% you. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Yeah. And then, we've talked about this before, but I'm talking about it again. The Archivist, which I love and adore.
So I know you love the Archivist. I love the Archivist. Looking at the playtest feedback, I'm not sure everyone knows what to quite make of the Archivist, because the Archivist, and I knew this when I designed it, the Archivist is really the oddball of the 4, and I wanted that. It is really us exploring this idea of, you have the Artificers, and you have the Artificers you expect from Eberron and other D&D worlds. What happens if their magical science evolves?
Right.
And we have in D&D worlds golems and other constructs that, going all the way back to 1st edition, spellcasters have been able to make. So I'm exploring this idea of, what if you had a spellcaster, and specifically in this case the Archivist, focused on the creation of consciousness? Yeah. Because a lot of the different constructs in D&D that are created have consciousness. So it makes sense that someone in the D&D multiverse would fixate on the creation of the consciousness itself. And so that's why the Archivist has this ability to awaken consciousness in objects. And
that explains the Warforged.
Yes. So all 4 of the Artificer subclasses are a part of a meta story that Keith Baker and I have been tinkering with, of each of them having a role they played in the creation of the Warforged, and also of the other constructs that were deployed in the last war in the world of Eberron. Because House Cannith and the other makers of things in Eberron didn't just make the Warforged, they made many different war technologies. And a number of those creations have consciousness. So it made sense to me that you would have sort of a branch of the Artificer family dedicated to just creating consciousness. Right. And that's what the Archivist is all about. Now, the name has actually thrown some people looking at the playtest feedback, because I think some people skipped the little story text at the beginning, and so they're not quite tracking. And it makes sense. Why is the Archivist this person who essentially creates artificial intelligence? Right. The story is, they started as literal archivists. They were people storing information by writing scrolls and whatnot, but they started thinking, well, how could we store information in better and better ways? And that pathway led them to essentially computing. That the best place to store information would be in a mind that can rapidly access that information for you. And that's sort of the story of how they started, centuries ago in the scriptoria of Eberron, but in time they made it to, no, now they're actually making minds that are storing the information instead of just books. The Archivist has this mind that can have skill proficiencies that the Archivist lacks. That mind can help the Artificer email themselves at higher level, basically turn themselves into raw information and transport And it's a suite of abilities which I'm glad to see a number of players find really exciting. And then other people are just like, what the heck is going on here? Because again, the Archivist, the point was for it to be weird.
Yeah.
And looking at the playtest feedback, we have succeeded at bringing the weird. Because again, it's all about consciousness, information, turning yourself into information, broadcasting information, because the Archivist can also, using the artificial mind and also magic items that bear the Artificer's infusions, the Archivist can communicate telepathically over tremendous distances. They have a really exciting toolkit.
Especially for an adventuring party.
Yes. Yeah, you can imagine the Archivist being the information hub for a group of adventurers, the person who's keeping people connected, who is traveling long distances if necessary, the person who could have a key role in different heists, because if you get one of those infused items into the place that you need to get to and then teleport yourself in there, some really fabulous tricksy situations could play out in a D&D campaign.
Well, if you decide to make one of the magical infused items a coin,
right,
know, and you just pay someone with that coin, you can go with them.
Mm-hmm. And overall, playtest feedback on the Artificer has been very positive. Satisfaction with the class overall is hovering around 80%.
That is high.
We consider a player option publishable if it reaches 70%.
Okay.
So reaching around 80 means the thing is on solid ground.
Okay.
The subclasses, the satisfaction is more varied. Battlesmith satisfaction is really high. And then if you're interested in the sort of how they rank, it goes Battlesmith is most satisfied, then Artillerist, then Archivist, then Alchemist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it turns out that the super weird Archivist is not in last place. It's actually the
very
Alchemist.
glad. Please be kind to the Archivist.
Well, I will be kind to all of them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking about the Artificer with me yet again. I very much appreciate it.
I love talking about this ultimate tinkerer class.
Yeah, I'm excited.